Welcome, ladies and gents, to another exciting episode of the Wrestling Connection podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in this week. We are very, very grateful for that, and we are here for another lovely, lovely day of wrestling chat. Ways that wrestling connects us on this beautiful wrestling podcast. Hello again, everyone. My name is Chris. This is Glenn, and we are making history, folks. This is the first time we are recording an episode, and it's not dusk, or it is not the middle of the night. We are now first thing in the morning. This is 6 a.m. We're recording this. It's a total culture shock, and I've just had my breakfast. Glenn, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Getting the sleep out of my eyes for sure. But yeah, I'm. I tell you what, man. Like how many weeks have we been in lockdown now?
Well, we started this a couple of weeks in, so I reckon about 11 or 12.
Right. So I'm really used to my way of life now.
Yeah.
And next week, I'm going to be walking into a school for the first time.
You're going in?
Lockdown. I'm going in for one day next week as part of what many schools in Scotland are doing to kind of get things ready for August when the kids come back.
Right.
And it'll be amazing. And I'm sure like all the safety precautions, in fact, I know for a fact there's all kinds of safety measures in there for distancing and stuff. But as much as I can't wait for life to be normal again, there's a slight anxiety about it because it's taken me this long to get settled into this lifestyle. And so the thought of then going back to it, of course, it's going to come with like all these amazing things over time, like seeing family and friends again. But geez, it's a bit nerve-wracking. I don't know how you feel about this.
Well, I'll not be going back to work or anything for another good month and a half, really. So I'm still right in that sort of mindset of just trying to bide my time. But I've been very lucky this week that I've had some work to do from home. I'm doing some video editing for the university that I work for, so it's been really, really cool getting to do some of that stuff. But because of that, having work from home, as you're well aware of, that requires lots of wrestling on in the background just to kind of help you.
Yeah.
Because you said this before, you can sit and you can really take it all in and appreciate everything, but sometimes, wrestling's the perfect thing just to have on,
Absolutely.
So I've been doing it this week a lot with my watching, and let me tell you this, I have gone absolutely mental this week with the wrestling I've watched. There's been nothing else on my TV other than one movie. I watched Django Unchained the other night. Great film.
That's right, yeah.
And other than that, there's been I've been into like my series recently and watching Netflix stuff. There's been nothing on the telly apart from wrestling all week. And because I've been kind of catching you guys up with like what I've been watching in terms of 2007 and that sort of thing. Put it this way, I'm halfway through 2008.
Jesus, wow. I mean, it's amazing how quickly you get through it. And I'm the same. I started my current marathon a good maybe year and a half, 2 years ago. I started from the Monday Night Raw after WrestleMania 2000, and it took me a long time to even get to 2001. And since lockdown, like I've pretty much, I think when lockdown started, Triple H just won the Rumble.
Right.
And now I'm at, the build-up to Unforgiven. So I've watched a lot of wrestling as well. It's like you say, it's great background stuff. It's the kind of thing that you can either pay lots of attention to and be totally absorbed by it, or it can just be there in the background. You don't need to really get too absorbed in it. But you can also kind of follow it as you go along, especially if it's stuff from those kind of eras. Like for me, it's 2002, and you're watching 08, 09. That's stuff that we already know, so we know where the stories are going. So you can afford to kind of tune in and out and have it as a background thing at the same time.
Well, I should make clear as well, I'm not watching the TV shows like you. Like, I'm not watching the Raws and SmackDowns. I'm just watching the pay-per-views. It's just been a joy. It's really nice to kind of, because I know, as you say, I know this era a lot, but I've not sat down and done this in so long. We are watching one after the other, and it's a great way to kind of give you a sort of refresher in terms of your memory and that sort of thing. And just to see the development of certain stories. Like, I mean, today it's great in WWE and AEW and that sort of thing with storylines, but 2008, I think, is a really, really underrated year for long-term stories being told, seeds being planted. In fact, all throughout the mid-2000s are great as well. I think back to 2005 with like Triple H and Batista and that whole long story that was excellent. It just went on for months and months and months, but it wasn't like you didn't feel bored about it because it was done really, really good, 2008 has been the exact same. It's been so cool to see this and like the build up of Jeff Hardy to becoming this massive star, and then having the age of Orton being conquered by Triple H, and Triple H really coming into his own. I don't know when you would say Triple H's prime was, But I think you've got two arguments. It's got to be 2002, 2003, or it's around this time where he's a great baby face.
Mm-hmm.
He was the top guy in the company when Cena was injured, but Cena's back now, obviously, because he comes back at the Rumble 08. But it's just everybody's doing well, and then of course Edge and Taker going back and forth all year. I've just watched One Night Stand 2008 yesterday when they have that great TLC match.
Oh man, I love that match. It's just ruined for me by Taker moving the ladder to set up the final bump.
Yeah,
That bothers me. But the way I kind of suspend my disbelief is that maybe he's groggy and he's disorientated, so he doesn't know what he's doing. So it doesn't ruin the match. But the fact that Undertaker at that point was well into his 40s, like he was late 40s, and he's taking a bump like that. And I don't care what you say. I do remember Matt Hardy saying in his autobiography that he did with Jeff, Exist to Inspire, that they do kind of cushion your blow a little bit, but it's still a freaking wooden table falling from a height, and a man that size, that match is. Sorry if this is your recommendation, by the way, but
no, it's not. It's not.
I just thought I thought, oh god, am I stepping on your toes? But like that those Edge and Taker, man, they had great chemistry. Great chemistry.
I mean, see the table bumps that Matt and Jeff talk about, in those TLC matches where like the four tables cushion the blow. They take those bumps like so expertly, like they go through it and like they place all different parts of their body on different parts of the table, so it's nice and easy. It's done really safely, right? This Taker one, as you say, he moves the ladder closer to the ropes, and I think they must have like marked it on the floor to where the table should be set up for for it to be like a perfect bump when the ladder was in the middle of the ring. It's a really big ladder. So he pushes him over, and because the ladder's kind of further over at the ropes, Taker kind of overextends, a little bit. And he hits kind of like the left side of the four tables, and it's really like a bump to the floor where the tables just kind of get in the way. It's brutal. But earlier in that show, Triple H and Randy Orton have a last man standing match, and Orton goes for the RKO, and Triple H throws him over the top rope to reverse it, and Orton breaks his collarbone.
Oh, that's so horrible. Yeah.
Oh, the way you see this in like the "Don't Try This at Home" advert and that sort of thing, but like when you first see it on the pay-per-view and the different camera angles, just the way like it just comes crashing down and his shoulder goes like right into the ground and he kind of slides because he's all sweaty. It's brutal.
Yeah. It's horrible, and the match really loses its momentum after that, as I recall. But credit to those guys, like they managed to just get a quick finish out of it. Like it's hard to imagine that if it was like a mid-card TV match and that happened now, they would just stop the match, simple as. But I think it reflects their professionalism and how seriously they take it, and the fact that they are huge stars. They wanted to make the best of the bad situation. They didn't want to send people home unsatisfied, so they still went ahead and did a finish. Obviously, it wasn't ideal, but that is one of those injuries. Like all injuries are unfortunate, all injuries are a shame. But I think those guys had a good bit of momentum in that match. It was not what the WrestleMania match was in the best possible way.
Yeah.
Because I think that's their only kind of dud is the WrestleMania match, and it's not a bad match. It just didn't really, the positioning of it didn't make sense in the storyline for them to have this. I know what they were trying to do with the whole "don't get disqualified" Triple H, but that's not what people were paying to see at that point. People wanted to see Triple H destroy it. People wanted a street fight, and I think if you're going to put these guys after Michaels and Taker having the greatest match of all time, no disrespect to Edge and Randy Orton, then you really need to give them every toy in the basket. You need to give them every tool that they can to put on a spectacle for the people. I think it's one of the most daftly booked main events in the history of WrestleMania.
Well, that's the problem of being like a singles match where like Triple H can't use any weapons or anything, for it to be the main event of WrestleMania. Like that's fine for Backlash or something, but not for the main event of WrestleMania, especially not after Taker and Shawn, which is actually the second greatest match of all time. Edge and Orton is the greatest wrestling match of all time. I don't know if you've heard.
I don't. I know. Correct me if I'm wrong. Will Backlash have happened by the time this goes out?
This will be the day of Backlash.
Right. So that's right, because Backlash is June 14th. So, folks, watching Backlash tonight, I hope. Chris is right. It'll be the great. Just notice that they're using The Greatest Showman for the promo for that.
Yes, but they're not just using The Greatest Showman. They're using the Panic at the Disco cover of The Greatest Showman.
Brilliant.
I don't mind the idea of it, that they're trying to make this pay-per-view of all these great wrestling matches, but I just don't understand. Why would you even put the pressure on not only Edge and Orton, but the rest of the card? You know what I mean? Oh man, I don't know.
But also, if I wanted to book that match with that label, I mean, I don't. When I think of Edge and Orton, that angle, I
Yeah,
want the last man standing match. I don't want a classic wrestling match from them. I don't think it makes sense. And I wouldn't book Edge, who's, recovering from a life threatening injury, not just a career threatening, but a life threatening injury. And Randy Orton, who's, excellent, but has made a name of being excellent because of his methodical and slow pace. Randy Orton doesn't do 5-star technical wrestling classes. I'm sure he probably could. But
yeah.
ever since he became like the Viper / Legend Killer, Randy Orton's got that Jake Roberts kind of slow and methodical. That's what he does. That's what he does best. When I think of the greatest wrestling match of all time, I would be booking a Shawn Michaels and Kurt Angle or something like that. Michaels and Taker. No, this is just bizarre. I can just think this is doing is tickling Vince McMahon, and that's why they're using this marketing.
What are they going to do? Like wrist locks and stuff, And I don't know. It's so backwards, the story as well. Like usually what someone comes back and they have this wrestling match and then it doesn't go very well. So Randy Orton then makes it personal and attacks his family and then they blow off with this last man standing match. But instead, they've done the angle first, then the last man standing match, then the technical wrestling match. I don't know. It's really weird. But anyway.
It's weird. Can I just mention, and I don't know what you were moving on to there, but I was just going to chuck something in that I've been watching this week.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Yeah, what have you been checking out?
Oh, I'll learn not to jump the gun. It's usually me too keen to hear the sound of my own voice.
That's all right. No.
Right, so you've been going wrestling daft this week, and I'm kind of the same. And see, I've started to get really into AEW. Ever since AEW's inception, I have been a casual viewer, and I haven't really watched it consistently, or I've not really been a committed fan. But lockdown being lockdown, I feel like it's mad that I'm not taking advantage of the fact that I can watch the TV show for free every week, which I can't do for Monday Night Raw or SmackDown. I can't watch that every week for free as it's being broadcast. So, because I don't have BT Sports, I don't have any like digital packages or anything like that. The one thing I do pay for is the £4 a month to get ITV Hub ad free, because I can't stand the amount of ads that you have to get on that to watch it. So I pay that every month. And I now, my kind of weekend ritual is that on a Saturday morning, I usually get up first and sort out the dog. And then I just sit back and I watch Dynamite on ITV Hub. And it's just a case of trying to avoid spoilers. So I've been loving that. I love the aesthetic of the show. It's not perfect, but tell me which wrestling promotion is, and that judgment of what makes it perfect, that's just subjective. What I mean to say is it's not perfect to my tastes, but it's not the Glenn show as much as it should be. But then it's funny as well, because when we first started this podcast, we spoke about our wrestling stories, and I went on about how much the main thing for me about wrestling is the storytelling, but that doesn't mean that I don't love technical wrestling. And if you're going into a TV show with a bunch of stars that you're not familiar with, or you don't know the characters of the stories, the thing that hooks you initially is, I think, the quality of the wrestling. And it's for that reason I've also started watching every week 205 Live. And show has really bounced back, that show, ever since it's become a more of an offshoot of NXT, because the Cruiserweight title is now an NXT title. That show has really, really bounced back, because I feel like 205, came out of the Cruiserweight Classic, which was amazing. And then it just started to flop a bit, because then you had these weird things. And as much as I love Drew Gulak doing PowerPoints, I thought that was brilliant. I think a lot of it, when Enzo was the champion, like I saw what they were trying to do, but trying to mingle what the Cruiserweights was conceived to be with the Cruiserweight Classic didn't really mesh well with the main roster. And for me, the only great moment that came out of it was Noam Dar's debut in Glasgow.
Absolutely.
So I'm so glad that it is just more of a straightforward offshoot of NXT. It's basically an NXT show with more wrestling being showcased, and it's only half an hour long every week as well. That's the other good thing about it. But I would be remiss, Chris, if I didn't mention the highlight of my wrestling viewing this week, and I'll just say this. Did I hear myself say 3 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, we've actually been going for 14 minutes, but this whole storyline, imagine that was the gimmick.
Should we set the
14 minutes and out of here.
No, you go just really slow. So, folks, I'm conscious of the fact that, like, I don't actually. You'll know better than me. I don't know how many people listen to the show. I don't know if it's 5 or 6 people, but what I don't. The other thing I don't know is the ages of the people, and I wonder if there's anyone listening to this who is a bit younger. What the era I'm watching right now, 2002. I've just come across one of the most highly regarded and fondly remembered non-wrestling segments of that era. In 2002, when the brand split started, each brand had a general manager and they were at war. And at this point in the storyline, Lesnar's now exclusively on SmackDown, and so Raw now has its own world champion in the form of Triple H. So the two shows are really head to head, and I love how competitive they're making it feel on TV. I'd forgotten just how well they did this at the time, and it shows you they did such a better job than they did in 2016 when they tried. And that's not to say they did a bad job in 16, but I think they nailed it in 2002 in the early days of the brand extension. There's a tag team called Billy and Chuck, who for the time it was some would call it progressive, people would call it edgy or controversial. But it was never explicitly said, but they were kind of a homoerotic kind of team, and it's not something that you saw in wrestling at that time. The world was not as inclusive or as tolerant, and there was nowhere near the amount of acceptance of same-sex couples at that time. So to have a tag team in 2002 of two guys who were effeminate and danced in an effeminate way and dressed in a stereotypically effeminate way. And I'm not wanting to open up a conversation about gender roles here. It's just that's what the presentation was at the time, and that's how it landed at the time. It was it did stand out. On top of that, Billy and Chuck are great wrestlers, and they were a great tag team. So their storyline was going to climax at this. They never explicitly called it a marriage. They called it like a commitment to be your tag team partner for life, but they would also call it the first ever same-sex commitment ceremony or the same-sex marriage.
Oh, really?
And so they have this wedding ceremony officiated by this old decrepit man who's like really, really frail, and he talks like that. And Stephanie McMahon, the GM of SmackDown's there, and Rico is doing some of the comparing as well at the whole thing. Rico was their manager at the time.
He was a great performer.
I loved Rico, man. He's got such an interesting life story. I don't know what he's up to now, but he was a cop for many years. I don't know if he went back to the police after wrestling, actually. But he was great. And this is the segment where Rico turns on Billy and Chuck and goes to Raw. So the wedding ceremony goes on and on and on, and the old man says that the commitment is important, whether it lasts for 15 years, 16 months, or even 3 minutes. Anything at all like this, and then his voice drastically changes. And man, watching it back yesterday was a goosebumps moment. He then goes, "Wait a minute, did I just hear myself say 3 minutes?" And one thing I'd never appreciated about this segment before is that if you look beyond the foreground and you can just see the blurry outlines of the faces in the crowd, you can see them mouths aghast open. Because I think the initial thoughts that the audience members had was that when the old man said 3 minutes, that maybe Eric Bischoff would run in with Rosie and Jamal. 3-minute warning. But then when it became clear that he was Eric Bischoff, when he started ripping this amazing makeup, I mean, I was like, I've heard Bischoff and I think Pritchard talk about it with Conrad on their podcast. Like, that was a Hollywood makeup artist who did like Mrs. Doubtfire. That was the same makeup artist who did all that kit. And ripped it off, revealed that it was in fact Eric Bischoff in disguise, and they totally crashed the wedding. And Rico turns his back on SmackDown and on his former associates. And it's just such a great twist that's why it's remembered so fondly. I met Billy Gunn a few years ago, and when it came to questions and answers, I'm glad I was going to ask about that segment, but somebody bet me to it. And rightfully so, because it was great to hear his take on it. But what I didn't know for many years was that Bischoff, it took so many hours to get that makeup on that he just wandered around in the prosthetics throughout the day, just talking to people as this seedy old man.
That's great.
So folks, I know I'm not recommending anything this week, but go and watch that segment because it's from SmackDown in September 2002. It's the season premiere SmackDown, and it's just an electric segment to see for so many reasons.
Totally. I mean, you talk about underrated tag teams. You've got two of them there, Billy and Chuck, and the 3-minute warning. The 3-minute warning were these two massive guys, called Rosie and Jamal. Rosie went on to be the Hurricanes tag team partner. He was the superhero in training,
That's
and
right. Oh, what does that stand for again?
SHIT.
Yep.
And and then Jamal ended up being Umaga, who went on to do really good things, especially in 2008, which I've been watching. It's really cool to see
Yep.
Umaga. He's just had that great falls count anywhere match with Jeff Hardy, where Jeff slides down the banister of the stairs and
Yeah.
like frog splashes him. Good stuff. And then every time someone would say the letters or the words 3 minutes, these two massive guys would come out and just like destroy whoever was in the ring. It was a really cool segment, a really cool like idea for their character, but it didn't last very long. Ironically, it just I don't know. They could have done so much more with that tag team, and for two massive guys that could move really well. My highlight of them, other than this segment, is the Survivor Series 02.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry, go on. Yeah,
that was it. That was it. Yeah. That's a great match, just a brilliant match, and they are again so agile in that match, and the bumps they take in it. Rose and Jamal were something special, and then Umaga, like you say, had some great matches with Cena, great matches with Jeff Hardy. He was
Triple H.
He was something else, and it's of course, yeah. We were talking about No Mercy last week or the week before.
Yeah.
So, I think it's really sad that sadly both of them have passed away, and we could never see a 3-minute warning reunion. Really, really unfortunate. Both part of that Samoan dynasty. Those guys, both deserving in the Hall of Fame, in my view. We'll see if it ever happens.
Cool. Well, on that, in terms of watching things this week, shall we move on to the match of the week?
Wrestling recommendations, wrestling recommendations, wrestling recommendations. Match of the week.
Oh yeah.
Okay, this week's match of the week, I'll try and keep it somewhat short because we've kind of spoke about this era already today. But this is from 2008, around WrestleMania sort of time. And my match of the week recommendation is a match that I have totally forgotten about. Mainly because I hadn't come back to this era in a while, but also because these two wrestlers wrestled each other so many times, a lot of their matches kind of get blurred. And my match of the week this week is from No Way Out 2008, and it's for the WWE Championship. It is Randy Orton versus John Cena. John Cena won the Royal Rumble in 2008, and he refuses to wait until WrestleMania, and he says, I want to do it now. I want to do it at No Way Out. So that means that whoever won the Elimination Chamber that night would go on to wrestle the champion at WrestleMania. So the title match happens before the Raw Chamber, because the Raw Chamber is the main event, which is awesome, by the way. If you're looking for an Elimination Chamber match to watch, check that one out. But the reason I picked this one is a couple of things. As I say, it was kind of forgotten about. You think of like maybe SummerSlam 09, or is it TLC 2013 they have a match. These main event matches between Orton and Cena that ended up being really good. They had like an Iron Man match and an I Quit match and that sort of thing around kind of 2009 sort of time. But and even before, in 2007, before Cena got injured, they had the SummerSlam match and stuff, which they've always had really good chemistry. But this one is just totally gone from my memory. And they have this really good match, but what makes this match is the crowd. And you know the way around this time and onwards from there, when Cena would be in these high-profile matches, the crowd would be, electric, but it would always be like 70-30, either, 70 for people hating Cena towards like the kids in the crowd or whatever, or it would be 70-30 to the fact where the 70% were like everybody cheering Cena. And it was always kind of like, you either like him or you don't, depending on where you are in America,
That's right, yeah.
This match here, I'm not even joking, this crowd are 50-50 for both guys. It's just an absolutely electric watch this.
Don't you just love it when that happens, whether or not they intend it to be the case? Because usually the bookers would only want that if it's two baby faces. But I don't care if it's two heels, a face and heel. When there's a split and it's a passionate crowd, it adds so much.
And I mean, we know how great Orton and Cena are, and they'll go down as two of the greatest ever. But I don't want to hear anybody say that these two aren't legit top guys, don't deserve to be in the top guys, to be in the top spot, don't deserve to be main eventers, don't deserve to be champion. When these two guys are standing in the ring and they haven't even done anything yet, and the place is going mental, that's when you know you've got two stars. I mean, I bring up the Roman Reigns thing all the time. I don't want to hear Roman Reigns is a bad wrestler and all that, because the response he gets is ridiculous,
It's ridiculous, but bothers me to no end. If you try and tell me that Roman can't wrestle, or that John Cena can't wrestle, or that Randy Orton can't wrestle, I'm sorry. I think between you and I, we could probably come up with 10, at least 10 matches each that prove otherwise.
Yeah.
Like, those guys are stars for reasons, and you know what? We have so much choice in wrestling now that if it bothers you that these guys are in the main event or were in the main event at their respective eras, go watch AEW, go and watch NXT UK or 205 Live, or check out your local indie promotion. There's something for everyone in wrestling nowadays.
It's just crazy. I mean, another thing, why people don't like that sort of thing is because they don't think that crowd reaction and energy from a crowd in an arena is part of wrestling. This is part of wrestling, being, charismatic and enthusiastic about it and stuff to get that emotion out of a crowd. That is part of wrestling. It's just as big of a part of wrestling as being good at wrist locks and stuff like Edge and Orton, who are going to be in the greatest match ever,
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. Seeing these crowd reactions and listening to this match, it's almost like you don't even think about the moves and stuff, because the crowd are so into it. It's great. And there's a finish that comes out of nowhere that you won't expect unless you can remember it, of course. But I'd recommend checking this one out. And have you ever noticed when you're watching shows, do you ever recognize certain fans that are always in like the front row?
Yes, so I'll list you a few right now. So there's the couple that the bald guy in the bright pink shirt, and his wife's in a bright yellow shirt. They've been in backstage segments before in Raw. I've noticed that
Really?
watching the watch long. Yeah, they're known. There was Vladimir, who was more of a '90s guy who would show up in ECW, WCW, and WWE in the front.
And the muscly guy.
Muscly guy, and the most recent thing I've seen him in was at One Night Stand 2005. Where the camera passes him, and you just see him go ECW. Of course, there's Brock Lesnar guy and Sign guy, and
Brock Lesnar guy, yeah.
Frank the Clown as well more recently. And then going back to ECW, you had Hat guy and the original Sign guy as well. So but you know what? You don't see a lot of Sign guy anymore, but I loved him. Like Rick, isn't it?
Rick,
his name is
yeah.
Rick.
Well, his philosophy was that you go and you cheer the good guys and you boo the bad guys. That's the way it works,
Yeah, I've always done that. Well, actually, that's a lie. I did go for a smarky face, didn't we all? But in principle, that is what I do. Is I love to cheer the good guys, because I wouldn't go and see a pantomime and start cheering for the evil queen. I want Snow White to prevail, and I think it ruins it for everyone else. And especially at WWE show, when they ever come around to the Hydro, there's so many kids around you that I don't want to be that guy. Yeah. I feel like you're a wee bit over your own head. I know you pay your money, you can cheer for whoever you like, but when I'm surrounded by wee Waynes who can't believe that they're getting to see Roman Reigns in the flesh, I want them to enjoy that. So I don't want their experience to be slightly tarnished by some numpty and a few rows behind them going, "Yeah, you can't wrestle."
Yeah, or you can have our experience that we talked about when the kids are like, "Oh my god, Roman Reigns, all he does is drugs," and Vince just loves all the guys that does drugs.
Yeah. Vince loves all the guys that does drugs. Yeah,
we're like that, like slapping our foreheads.
Where were these kids during the steroid scandal? They would have ensured we hadn't got to jail. Bloody hell, there'll be a new scandal soon if you're not careful. Bloody hell.
It's the way you do it. You know what I mean? Like you can clap your favourites if your favourite's a heel, and you can appreciate them, and you can sit and smile and laugh and talk about how great he is. But that's fine. You don't stand up and scream at the top of your head and tell kids to sit down because they don't know anything about wrestling and stuff. You know what I mean? There's a way to do it.
You need to look in the mirror if you're that kind of fan.
Yeah.
And if you want a show where you can do that, I would say go to ICW, where I think other local promotions. Like ICW is an adult only product. I know they do actually do their wrestling experience shows now, which is pretty cool, like a family friendly version of the product.
Yeah, really cool.
But in ICW, they really do like listen to the crowd, and it's more, I think it's more fair game there, like for you to boo who you like or cheer who you like, and that's kind of encouraged. I think the Lionheart Joe Henry angle, the kind of double turn that they did where Joe Henry went heel and Lionheart went face, that was dictated by the audience. That was the audience that did that. But that's different at a WWE show, which is for everyone, it's for families. I just don't see Like, I don't know. I think there's something quite fun. Like, here's an example. I love Kevin Owens, and Kevin Owens. I know he's a face right now, but if he was a heel, he'd be a great heel. And I can just imagine being at a show, having good seats, close enough to interact with him, and I would boo him out the building, and I'd want him to flip me off and tell me where to go. But behind that layer, there's this respect from me that oozes out to him, and I hope coming from him an appreciation that I am booing him, because that's how I show respect to how good he is as being a villain. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my applause for him. Like, you're so good at what you're doing that I am going to thumbs down and tell you that you suck, you know?
Yeah, there's a grey area as well, where like there's people who you hate because they're so great, who are so great at being heels. But then there's also people that you don't like because for other reasons, maybe because maybe they're not the greatest and you don't agree with them or whatever, or they're dangerous. Not to mention any wrestlers in the WWE just now, but things like that. There's a grey area. But I think when you're booing someone so passionately, it's because they're so great at their job. But anyway, I was kind of talking about the certain fans that you remember. You mentioned all the kind of main ones there, apart from two. And the two that I'm talking about, there was one guy who was the We Hate Cena guy, and he kind of like had dark hair, and he made his own T-shirts, and he handed them out to all his friends and family that would go and they'd sit in the front row. And it was like this black T-shirt, and it was like a picture of Cena with like this sort of like no entry sign thing, like a sort of red cross over his face, and it would just say "We Hate Cena," and it was like anytime he came out, he would just scream at Cena and show him these T-shirts and stuff. And actually, at WrestleMania 26, I believe, when Cena won the WWE title, Cena goes down and Cena stands next to him, and the guy's screaming in his face. That's a good one. And then my favourite fan, if you want to say that, or my favourite recurring fan that's now become a character on the show, there's this family, and I don't know if anybody else has noticed this. I don't know if I'm the only one. Right? I'm really sad this way when I notice these things, but I might be the only one. But there's this family that always sit in the front row. It's a dad, a mum, and a son. The dad is kind of older. He's got glasses, kind of bald, and always had this big camera, and he would always take pictures of people with this big camera. The wife was always kind of looking like not sad and angry, but the way when you've got like a kind of sour look in your face, like she kind of always looked a bit that when she saw something she didn't like,
a resting bee face.
Yeah, kind of like a tasting a lemon sort of thing. And then and they had their son who was really, really quiet and looked as if like he was always really sad, like at all times, and he would never really do anything. He'd just kind of sit there, and he had like kind of longish hair and glasses, and he would just sit there. But then it's really nice because over time, these fans are always there at these big shows. They're always in the front row. And you've kind of seen them grow up a little bit to where now the son is like a full-on, grown up, and he's standing up and he's cheering folk now. And that's just something I've noticed over time. So anytime these guys are in like this family is in like the crowd, I find myself always looking at them like when something big happens to see how they are reacting. And I don't know why. It's just because either they're right in the center of the screen, and also because they're a good judge of like what's happening. If something's done really, really well, they'll have a great reaction. It's kind of a good gauge of how well the storyline of the match is coming across. These people, this We Hate Cena guy and this family are all in the front row during this Orton and Cena match. And like they are so anti-Cena, where this We Hate Cena guy has brought a sign that says Cena ruined WWE, and I'm just thinking like I want to know what, like how, how did he ruin WWE? Like I get you don't like him, and obviously he's not the same as Austin and Rock and Hogan.
Yeah.
But how does he? Look at the sellout crowd. Look at all this. What I mean? Look at this reaction he's getting.
I'm sorry, but I always like. I know they wanted Cena to be cheered, and he was booed by portions of the audience, and sometimes most of the audience. But I've always been a subscriber to the belief of in wrestling, any reaction is a good reaction, and any reaction is validation. Here's one of the best examples ever: the night after WrestleMania 33. This is my yard now.
Oh, amazing!
Roman Reigns was a babyface, but he was booed out that building, and I'm sorry, like I know the fans really, really slaughtered him out there, but he came out of that looking amazing. He looked so badass. I'm unfazed, and that's why I love the Roman Reigns character. He's just this badass who has a moral compass, but he is resilient and he's tough. And I was already a Reigns fan before that, but that show, that segment did the same thing for me that when I was 15, that Cena and RVD at One Night Stand did.
Yeah.
Like Cena was so resilient and so tough in the face of that hostile crowd that it converted me to being a fan.
He's just got the whole crowd, who every single person in that building is just screaming at him. They hate him. And I believe the chant is, "We all hate you." And Roman has just got them all in the palm of his hand, and like he's lifting the microphone up and not speaking, just letting them scream even more. It's great. Roman's just one of the best performers. But
I just think so. And I think if I sorry, you go. I'm rambling over your
sorry, I was just going to say long-winded segment there, but that just sparked that discussion of being these sort of fans and getting those reactions that we all kind of crave for.
Yeah, I just think if you're not like. If you hated Cena back in the noughties or whatever, I just think at some point you need to accept that Steve Austin wasn't ever going to wrestle forever. Neither was The Rock. Like, I know Triple H and Undertaker are kind of proving me wrong there, but but most of them aren't going to, and most of them don't have immortality. And it's just, I just think if I'm a little kid watching wrestling, I'm going to love Roman Reigns because he's cool. He's a superhero. And when I watch a segment like that, this is my yard now, I'm going to think, look how good he is at standing up to adversity or standing up to a bully. Because basically he's being bullied in that segment, I think in the eyes of a kid. And he just, dusts it off and stays strong. And I think if I was a wee kid going through bullying or just, looking for somebody to look up to, that segment would just make me more of a Reigns fan. Much more of a Reigns fan than would have been. So great recommendation, Chris.
Yes. So a wee reminder, match of the week is Randy Orton versus John Cena for the WWE title at No Way Out 2008. Don't go back to watch it just because of the wrestling aspect. It's got a really good finish that you don't see coming. However, go and watch it for the crowd. Look at the crowd and listen to the crowd. It is electric for two guys that really were just getting started,
Excellent. I'm thankful that you shared that with us today.
What a beautiful segue. Here we go. What are you thankful for this week?
What I'm thankful for in wrestling this week.
Oh yeah. Chris, instead of telling you what I'm thankful for, I want you to infer what I'm thankful for. And I'm going to let you hear a little something. So
it's not Mark Henry's song again, is it?
No, but you're not far off it.
This world is crazy. Holding on tight, trying hard just to keep control. Don't let go. I know the sun ain't
etc. Do you know what that was, Chris?
Absolutely not. But tell me, because I've got something on the tip of my tongue. But tell me.
That is the classic soulful ballad, "Put a Little Ass on It" by Rikishi from the record which I am thankful for this week, WWE Originals.
Put a little ass on it.
Yeah. I was trying to get you the chorus because it's so good. It's "Put a little ass on it." I can't find it, but you need to check out. So, folks, if you don't know, in 2003 or 2004 it was, WWE released an album called WWE Originals. And this was not part of the series of records that WWE would put out where you would just get the wrestlers' entrance music. No, this was a CD of original songs performed by the wrestlers themselves. What could possibly go wrong, Chris?
I don't know.
Kurt Angle rapping? Would you, like...
I Don't Suck, really?
Yeah, it's... I Don't Suck is one of those ones that is just...
Wow.
So I won't keep playing bits from songs, but just to give you a bit of context, so this came out when I was 13, and what I remember is that I was off sick. I had an ear infection when I was 13, so I would have been in first year or second year school maybe, and by coincidence, I think Robert was off as well, and so Robert came round to my house on my birthday whilst my mum was at work, and he hung out with me, and he gave me my birthday present, and it was WWE Originals.
Nice.
And it came with a bonus DVD as well, and I there's a running series of segments on the CD between Steve Austin and Jim Johnston, where it's just them talking, and progressively Steve Austin, his gears are grinded by Jim Johnston, and eventually it leads to a violent and physical altercation, which you can only hear because you can't see it. And it's got some classics. I wonder if I could take you through some of the great songs, just the titles of them, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
So, performed by the Dudley Boys, we've got "We Had Enough," which I don't know if you. That's probably one of my favorite songs on. It's actually pretty good. It's Devon and Bubba Ray are actually pretty good doing the kind of sing, talk, rapping kind of stuff.
Okay.
And Bubba's not got a bad voice. We've had enough of the what you coulda, the what you shoulda, the what you would have done. It's not bad.
Nice.
Trish Stratus does a song called "I Just Want You," which is you're just kind of Britney kind of pop of the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, is this one not all right? This one's quite good, isn't it?
No, but she's got a nice voice. And on the bonus DVD, Jim Johnson kind of seems, I'm not going to lie, he seems a wee bit creepy around her. And
really?
yeah, and he keeps saying like, oh, I think, we could do a lot more together with this. And of course, there was never ever another Trish Stratus record. We had Crossing Borders by Rey Mysterio, which is also pretty good because it's a rap about crossing the border from Tijuana to San Diego, which is pretty good. The Booker T song was used as his entrance theme, Can You Dig It? Again, not bad. It's a good kind of rap song, but not a good rap song, I Don't Suck, the Kurt Angle one. That one
Wait
is...
a minute. Do you remember when Booker T used Can You Dig It as his theme song, but then when he was teaming with RVD, they tried to make like a mashup, so it was like, "Can you dig it, Morgan?"
Oh my god, I used to laugh so much when they would do that. Like they would try and merge songs like Jericho and Showmiz.
Yeah,
and
I thought Jericho was good, but the Showmiz one was a mess.
It was, and Rated RKO was okay because it just went back and forth between Metalingus and Burning My Light.
Yeah.
Then we had When I Get You Alone by Lita. That doesn't sound predatory at all.
Wow.
Here's a really good one. You Don't Know Me at All by Lillian Garcia. We know how good a singer she is. That's a really good kind of motivational kind of rock ballad. Class. This is something that he should be using now if he would be allowed to. Chris Jericho does "Don't You Wish You Were Me," which is just
"Don't You Wish You Were Me."
I remember that one. Yeah. Everything a man could be. So that's full on Jericho, heel Jericho, and it's actually it works for him. We've then of course got "Put a Little Ass on It" by Rikishi, which is just. I'm seeing the DVD. Rikishi says that he's been wanting to do this for years because he apparently used to sing on the road with Yokozuna when they would travel together. He's not a bad singer. But it's just, it stops being acceptable, I think, as a song you can take seriously when he starts talking about "Put a Little Ass on It," and there's no real clarity what that actually means within the context of the song, because it seems to be a song about calm down, my love, these difficult times aren't so bad, it's okay, all you've got to do is put a little ass on it. What does that mean? Because it's not clear. Is it supposed to be a suggestive thing? I don't know.
Oh my god.
Stacy Keibler is auto-tuned to the max with "Don't You Just Want to Dance?" Or sorry, "Why Can't We Just Dance?" And then they stuck "Basic Thugonomics" on at the end of it, which is of course a great song as well. So, but the thing I love most about it is the DVD that came with it, which is, like I mentioned a few things from it, with the behind the scenes of it, and you do get the impression from the bonus DVD that Jim Johnston hates Jonathan Coachman, who kind of presents the whole thing. Really? Coach is kind of heel coach at that point, and when he leaves the recording studio, Jim Johnston just goes up to the chair Coach was sitting on and goes, "Oh, well, I guess I gotta have this chair cleaned." Oh.
Friend of the show, Jonathan Coachman.
Mm-hmm. Coach, we love you. Thank you for doing that introduction. And, we should just replay that one time, just use it again, just recycle it. Great intro from the Coach that he recorded the day of WrestleMania. But yeah, so I'm thankful for basic fucking. No, I'm thankful for WWE Originals because it is a mix of awful and brilliant. And sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between the two. And simply, you probably won't die sad if you'd never hear "I Don't Suck" or "Put a Little Ass on It," but you should still listen to it because it will round you and complete you as a person. So I am grateful, Chris, for the wacky and ridiculous but somewhat brilliant project that was WWE Originals. I can't imagine why they've never done anything like that since. Well, apart from the Elias EP that came out, they've never produced an album like that. Which I would. Are there any guys and girls on the roster you would like to hear do their own songs now?
Keith Lee. There you go. He's got a great voice. He's sang a bunch of stuff, and he does this thing. He used to do it in the Indies. He's not done it in NXT yet. I'm just waiting for the moment where like a big move would happen, and Keith would sing "Oh my God." He'd go "Oh my God," and he'd like scream it, and the fans would pop. He still would do it in NXT. I'm waiting for it, but he'd be great, and I'm sure they could do a bunch of folk. Like there's loads of ones. I'd love to hear a Seth Rollins song.
Oh my God! But Seth Rollins has got that kind of raspy voice. You know, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I'm thinking about. I mean, obviously, Elias is one. I loved them. I love the Tyler Breeze theme. You know.
Exactly. There you go. There's one. And Woods, Xavier Woods.
Of course, yes. Oh, can I just throw in as a side note? I'm so happy that Breezango are back. It's the best thing in the world.
Yeah, I love both those guys. Tyler Breeze a bit more. I just wish they'd stuck with the original Prince Pretty gimmick, you know. But Breezango are a great team.
Yeah, they are. I'm trying to think of anyone else on the roster right now who, like Miz and Morrison, of course, did that song before WrestleMania, that diss track, which was so brilliant because it was terrible. I think of the Matt Cardona as Zack Ryder doing the Broski song from about a decade ago.
That's right. No, Hosky. You are a Hosky. Yeah.
Terrible, really.
Yeah, those are some good ones.
But yeah, I remember, like, do you remember I told a story a couple of weeks ago where I came back from Rebellion and some kid asked me what it was like seeing Vince versus Shane, and I just lied and said, yeah, it was great because the kid was mistaken. I remember I think was it Robert or somebody else? It may have been Robert. Robert, if you're listening, and it was you I said this to, I'm sorry. Maybe it was my brother. But I remember for no particular reason, just impulsively lying about something on this record. I told somebody that Kane had a track on it, and I even made it up in my head. I started going, all the fire and the pain, it is good to be Kane. I know, and I think it was either Lewis, my brother, or Robert, and I just lied and said, yeah, it's great. Kane has a song, and it's sung to the Kane theme. All the fire and the pain, it is good to be Kane. And that's the only line I came up with. I'm actually blushing now, thinking about it. Like, it's one of these just weird things. I was 13, and I decided to write a little song about Kane and lie and say that existed when, like, you could easily fact check that, even in 2004. Like,
yeah. God, other for the record, songs. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, for the record, Kane has never performed his own song.
No. I do like it though when there's other wrestling songs from not in the wrestling, you know. Like recently, the band, I don't know how familiar you are with Bowling for Soup, but they did a band.
The girl all the bad guys want.
They did a song recently called Alexa Bliss. And
really?
It was all about Alexa Bliss. You don't see it? No, I'll send you the link. It's great. Yeah, Alexa Bliss in the music video.
I just assumed that Bowling for Soup stopped existing after 2001. Like,
no, she's a big fan apparently. And they made a song about her. Why can't every girl be more like Alexa Bliss? That's what it goes. It's only got 1.5 million views on YouTube, so there you go. I'm going to send you a link to it. Yeah, in terms of the WWE CDs, I always loved them. Like I wore Full Civil Entry out on the car CD player for months. I like that one. That was my favorite one. But the one from like 2008 sort of time with like No More Words, and they had the ECW theme song that went, "Oh, I've heard you've been looking for me," but that was a great.
You've got a nice wee baritone going on there, Chris Moffat. Why are you not doing the oh yes on the segments, which are non-negotiable, by the way? We're never getting rid of them. Why are you not doing them?
Because all the years I've been imitating Creed, so here you go.
When you say Creed, do you mean the band or the creepy character from The Office?
Definitely don't make impressions of Creed from The Office.
Can I just, before we move on, just quickly suggest to everyone listening, I'm not going to play it and I'm not going to give you any lyrics, but there's a famous mashup thing on YouTube, the Jim Ross rap, My Ass.
Oh my God, it's legendary.
It's brilliant, and someone's basically taken a lot of his commentary tracks. Mainly, a lot of them are from the Warzone video game, actually,
Really?
and made this ridiculously suggestive rap. And just unless Chris, you want to,
suggestive.
well, I'm thinking of the 30 men will anyway. Chris, maybe perhaps that should be what plays us out today. I don't know.
Okay. I don't
Or
know
maybe
because someone made it. You know.
yeah, that's true. Or maybe we should take something from originals, or just not. Maybe we should just move on. But I think it is good. It may be time to move on, but it's also time for
Toilet break.
Welcome back, everybody, from the toilet break. During the toilet break, I was looking on my Spotify, and I have an album that I've created myself called The Wrestling. And it's basically just a playlist of all like the theme songs that are on Spotify in case I'm ever walking somewhere with reckless intent. No, pardon the pun. Way-o, boom, roasted. And I just want to walk to like the Big Boss Man's theme song or something. I'll just play that. So I'm going to.
Oh, that's a great walking theme.
Yeah.
Although I do love his original one from like the 80s and the 90s, you know.
I prefer that one. Okay, so I'm going to click shuffle and we'll see which theme song comes on. Ready?
Go.
Oh, belter from Reckless Intent.
Maria /
wait for
Stacy Keibler. Is that Zebrahead?
Yeah. Zebrahead.
Legs go on and off for days. They did a really good song called Playmate of the Year. That was one of their biggest hits.
They did a song called... Sorry, go on.
I was just saying they're kind of for me in that kind of same pop punk era as Bowling for Soup. Like they're a band that they're a time capsule for me. They take me back to like being like 13 and 14, and all I wanted to listen to was Blink 182 and Offspring and Calling for Soup. Calling for
Offspring,
Soup? No,
yeah.
Bowling for Soup.
And
Zebra.
I love that song.
Do you know why I said Calling for Soup is because when I was at school, there was a really good band called Calling for Sushi. In our year group, there was a bunch of boys in our year group who had a band called Calling for Sushi, and at our school we would do battle of bands every single year. And there was so many good bands. The band I was in was not one of them. I played synthesizer for a band, and we were awful. We were almost like Spinal Tap awful. So I would like to think there was something endearing about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Sadly, we did no wrestling covers, but that tangent's kind of hit a brick wall. So let's move on.
Yeah, let's do one more. What's coming up next? Oh.
The best ever.
I think it's the best ever, really.
Now, have you heard about the much fabled Vince McMahon version of that?
I've never heard it, but I kind of vaguely know about it.
Same, right. So we all know that when Sean first shows up with that theme, it was Sensational Sherry who originally sang that song. And then Michaels did his own version of it. He just recorded his own vocals, and that's the version that he uses to this day. But apparently, there exists a version of Sexy Boy sung by Vince McMahon, and you can just hear it, if you think about it. But apparently every time it goes online, it gets taken down, and I've never heard it, and I've always wanted to. So if anyone's listening to this can link me up to Vince McMahon doing Sexy Boy, I had my expectations are high because I think about such classic performances as Stand Back. I think Vince McMahon has a good groove and a good drawl to his voice. So yeah, if anyone has heard the Vince McMahon Sexy Boy theme and wants to describe it for me, then please contact us. How can people get in touch with the show, Chris?
Great point. Great question. You can get us on social media on Instagram at WrestleConnection, and you can get us on Twitter at WrestleConnect1, or even on Facebook, facebook.com/The Wrestling Connection. Can we please do a whole episode on theme songs soon?
Oh God, yes, please, because it's clear that we have a lot to say about them, so that'd be awesome. I'd love that.
Yeah, we'll do that soon. I'm looking forward to that. Let's carry on with what we kind of chatted about last week, and we kind of put a pin on it last week because we had been going for so long, and we were like not even made a dent into our lists talking about our favourite pay-per-views of all time. We kind of got into kind of early 2000s, and we talked about a couple of WrestleManias. WrestleMania 24 in particular, still a great show, and of course that's been around the sort of time I've been watching this week, so that was kind of cool to revisit that. But in terms of other great pay-per-views and favourite pay-per-views of all time, what other ones do you have on your list that you would like to chat about?
Got a few here. And if I was to do it chronologically, the next one on my list would be another WrestleMania. But I think there's one that I want to talk about just to make sure that we cover it, because I don't know if it's on everyone's list, but it's kind of been maybe an obscure favorite of mine because I had it on DVD and I watched it religiously over and over again for many years, and that is Unforgiven 2006.
Oh yes, good one, absolutely.
So I was 15 when this show happened, and I remember being really excited about the build-up for it because it was the only time in history that a Hell in a Cell and a TLC match has been promoted on the same card. As far as I'm aware, I think that's the only time that's ever happened. And the other memorable thing from that show is Trish Stratus's retirement match with Lita, which is a great match.
Yeah.
And
really
what
good.
part of what makes that, apart from the fact that you've got two excellent wrestlers, part of what makes that match is the atmosphere and the audience. They're so behind Trish because it's in Toronto. So obviously the love for Trish is great. She beats Lita with the sharpshooter, of course. Shades of Bret Hart, he's from Calgary, but one of Canada's most famous wrestlers of all time. But I actually have a lot of fondness for the Hell in a Cell match, and I think some people, a lot of people maybe don't like this match. It's a 3-on-2 handicap match. It's the McMahons and Big Show versus D-Generation X, Triple H and Shawn Michaels. And I kind of loved it because I feel like if you're going to put that combination of those 5 men in a Hell in a Cell match, I don't think it could be any better than what it was. And I even like this stupid ending with the kind of Big Show's, Vince McMahon kissing Big Show's arse at the end of the match.
Yeah.
But, it was brutal. It was violent. It was first time that the modern day cell was ever used, the taller one, as opposed to the more iconic cell that Mick Foley got chucked off of.
That's right.
It was the first time that taller cell was ever used. And then to top it all off, I think Edge and Cena have a really good TLC match, and it was, again, I may be wrong here. I think it was the first ever singles TLC match, although I think Edge and Ric Flair had one on Raw.
I think earlier in the year.
Yeah, so that was maybe the first singles TLC match, but it was the first one on pay-per-view for sure. And that's got a great finish with the FU, as it was at the time, off the top rope. And again, that's another match that consolidated me as a Cena fan, because it doesn't get more hostile than facing Edge in Toronto. You know what I mean? There were still cheers for Cena
and
that
Edge's
night,
match.
He was the Yeah, absolutely. Edge's match. There were still kids cheering for Cena, but he was a Toronto boy, and he was a heel, but he was a cool heel Edge. He was doing that kind of rated R sex and violence and kind of gimmick. And certainly as a 15-year-old guy, like at the time, I was a huge Edge fan at the time. Although I didn't quite ever forgive him for the whole Matt Hardy Lita thing, that my immature kind of perspective on that, really, I didn't really fully grasp it, so I just kind of hated on Edge. But I loved that show, and I don't know if it's a show you remember fondly, but mainly for those 3 matches: Trish and Lita, the McMahons versus DX with Big Show, and the Cena Edge TLC match. It was a good variety show. That's what I loved about it. I like wrestling shows that are variety shows, and that's, to go back to what we're saying about booing the heels and cheering the faces, that's what some of these fans need to remember, is that the WWE being a mainstream product, they're trying to appeal to everybody, especially at a big show like a WrestleMania or any pay-per-view. So they will have like a Daniel Bryan versus Drew Gulak, but you're also going to get the Firefly Funhouse match, or, Braun Strowman beating Goldberg. You're going to get a mix of things in these products. And you need to accept that. There needs to be something for everybody, and it can't just be all about what you want. If I had my way in AEW, it would probably look slightly different, but I still love it for what it is. I'm not a huge Chris Jericho fan, but I still enjoy what he does. Like, I still appreciate and respect his contributions to wrestling. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's like, you need to kind of put your own ego to one side when you consume wrestling. And I think this is a good example of why that's important, because this is a very eclectic show, and there's a bit of everything. And it's also got cool artwork on it as well, with the Unforgiven words cut into Cena's chest. You would never see that today. Never.
Yeah. Yeah, a bit too violent for today. This show, I have fond memories of this show when I was younger, big time, because the novelty of having like these two, maybe the 2 biggest and most like favourite stipulation kind of matches when I was younger, a TLC and a Hell in a Cell on the same show. My God. Only way you would get better than that would maybe have a ladder match, but I suppose a TLC match is like an upgrade, But yeah, this week when I was talking about watching all the 2008 pay-per-views and that sort of thing, it made me realise just how lucky we are with the network, that we just have everything at our fingertips,
Yeah.
I remember having, I've been really, really lucky with and really good with my collecting over the years. And when I was younger, especially pre-network days, it was all about WWE DVDs. I'd try and get as many as I could to get this massive library of DVDs. And I still have them all in my room.
Yeah.
Even though I never use them because everything's on the network, But actually I had to give my network login to my cousin who wanted to watch the Undertaker series. So I was like, right, well, he's going to use that. I can't use the network. And I was about to watch Judgment Day 2008 this week. So I was like, I wonder if I've got it on DVD. So I went up to my room and I found the DVD and I put it in, and I was like, it pure reminded me of like my mate having this pay-per-view on DVD. And he also had Unforgiven 06, which is what reminded me of this. And just like wearing these DVDs out because you would watch them over and over again. And it's not as if it was just easy, like to go and, pick a match out or whatever like you can do in the network. Like you had to go and buy the DVD, bring it home, put the DVD in and do all that sort of stuff. And it made me realise like how special that kind of was. And
really
these pay-per-views like Unforgiven 06, like you say, and like some of these 08 ones and definitely some of the 09 ones. Like my mate Grant, who was my best friend all through school, who I've not really spoken to that often recently, which is a shame. But we were just diehard, wrestling fans and stuff, and we'd always go to each other's houses and have sleepovers and that sort of thing. And we'd always watch these pay-per-views on DVD, like put them into the PlayStation and just let them play. And shows like that are really like, bring back those kind of nostalgic memories for me,
It's we are lucky to have it, but I agree with what you're saying about. There was something about that era of collecting DVDs. I had a big collection as well. I don't know about you, but did you ever have, like, this is something that you don't get anymore at all, but the excitement of going into CEX to see what would be there on the wrestling shelf was always like a great thing for me. And I still, every time I'm in that shop now, if anyone doesn't know, it's like basically a trade-in store where you can buy secondhand DVDs and games and things and consoles. But like every time I'm in, I still look at the wrestling section, even though there's no need for me to buy anything from there. But every now and then you'll see little nuggets, wee gems. But I used to love seeing like what they had, and I would regularly buy DVDs from there back in the pre-network era.
I love going in there. I always look at any shop I'm in, Asda, HMV, Tesco, anyone. I'm always looking at the DVDs to see the films, but it's always nice to see, what wrestling ones they have, And recently, right before lockdown happened, I did one last acting gig before lockdown. It was like the day before lockdown. Really, it was like last thing to do, before we couldn't leave a house again. And it was through in Edinburgh, and I went through there, and it was so weird. I didn't have a call time. In this industry, you get really, really funny stories and crazy stories, and just like, how does this happen? But I didn't have a call time. I was just told it was going to be in the afternoon. So I just went to Edinburgh at midday and just thought I'll just walk about until I'm called, But it was like the day before lockdown and everything was shut. Like Starbucks had been shut and McDonald's had been shut, so I couldn't go in anywhere and sit. I just had to walk about Edinburgh for 4 hours or whatever, until I was called. And funnily enough, CEX was the only shop that was open. And I went and killed about an hour in CEX walking about, and I went to the wrestling section, and they had like all these old WWF DVDs and stuff. And I was like, my God, if this was there 10 years ago, I would have been freaking out,
Yeah. You were saying as well about, giving your network password away. I've done that a lot recently, and we're all about how wrestling connects us. That's the name of our show. That's the point of this show, is that we talk about how much we love wrestling, because it's something that we can have in common with anyone, really, no matter what your values, your background, your politics are. Like, wrestling is so universal, isn't it? And one of my old colleagues recently from the school I recently left, you know him, actually, you met him at my wedding, actually. One of my colleagues texted me during lockdown and said, here, I've got a free evening, the kids are both asleep. And then he sent me a gif of like the Mega Powers, Macho Man and Hogan. And he said, I want to watch classic wrestling from around this era, but I have no idea where to start. And I said, well, here's my network login, and I want you to watch, and I know it's a wee bit later than Mega Powers, but I said, if you watch Royal Rumble 1992, you're not going to be disappointed. And he said, thank you. And then he contacted me like a day or two later to say, thank you so much for recommending that, Glenn. The kids went to sleep. It was just me and a glass of wine, and I loved every minute of it. I was so happy when Ric Flair won. I felt like he really deserved it because he was
That's
into
great.
wrestling as a kid, and that was his era. You know what I mean? And it was just so lovely. Like here's a guy that I worked with for 2 years, and I get on like a house on fire with, but we'd never really spoken that much about wrestling at all. And it was just nice that this new aspect to our relationship, I suppose, kind of came about after, just for him having the notion after seeing a GIF. So that's my sharing network password. But yeah, WWE should probably be prosecuting me for the amount of times I've shared my password.
Yeah, but I love the fact they watched the whole show. That's great. You know, they'd be like old wrestling fans, just like maybe watch 1 or 2 matches and they've had their fix. You know, that's great. He watched the whole show to see the finish of the Rumble. That's great.
Absolutely.
Shall we move on? You're talking about Unforgiven 06. I'll hit you with 2 actually from around that time. Why don't we chat a little bit about One Night Stand 2005 and 2006?
Thank you, Chris. Those are both on my list.
Yeah, me too.
That was what I was going to go to next. Dude, please, you start us off. You brought this to the table, but like I love these shows. Let's start off with 05, the one that started the resurgence. Why is it on your list?
Well, when I was younger, you hear about ECW, you know, and I'd seen some clips. We talked about LimeWire before. So, you know, I managed to get some ECW clips from LimeWire. I specifically remember sitting at my dining room table for some reason, watching Tommy Dreamer have that scaffold match where like all the tables were all kind of built up. You know, infamous clip, I downloaded that one from LimeWire. It was like one of the first ECW clips I ever saw. You can imagine my mind being blown. I was obviously never allowed to watch it because it was always, you know, like an older product and stuff, you know. And I remember, right, I don't know what we were doing. I might have been going to the post office or going to maybe post a letter or maybe even just walking home from school. But I was with my dad, and my dad at the time, obviously because he was more interested in like the internet and stuff than I was at the time because I was a bit too young. But he would always read like some of the dirt sheets and that sort of thing in the news sites. And he said there's rumours that they might be bringing back ECW. And I remember asking him, I can remember exactly where I was. I was at the post box at like the bottom of my street. And I remember asking him, like, see when it comes back, can I watch it? Can I please watch ECW? Because I was never allowed to, you know? And I was still really young. And he was like, we might not even get over here, you know? I might, because at the time, you know, it was around about that, so a wee bit earlier. They were talking about Shane McMahon was going to make it like a web show and all that sort of stuff, you know?
That's right.
There was all these possibilities of what it could be, you know? And it ended up being this massive television deal on Sci-Fi, you know? And ended up, of course, being on Sky Sports here, so we could get it. And ended up, you know, I was allowed to watch it because it was a bit more tame. But this first show, I remember I was off. Do you know what? It just came back to me. I was off school. I was ill, and I was off school, and it was the day after One Night Stand, and we'd recorded it onto a DVD, and I still have the DVD, like the bootleg one that I recorded off of Sky Sports.
Yeah,
I still have it in my room, and we got it on it. We burned it onto a DVD, and I watched One Night Stand 05 on my own, instead of going to school. And it was one of the happiest moments of my life. It's an amazing show, but I feel like it's not, you know, as good as other wrestling shows and stuff. But what it means, it's so much more, you know, in terms of this is the first time we're seeing real ECW since 01. And the thing about it was a WWE pay-per-view, but it is an ECW show, total free reign to the ECW guys.
Absolutely.
You know, we talk about Wrestling Buffy having like something for everything, you know. There is something for everyone in this show. I love it.
It's brilliant for me. I have a weird kind of way of a story about finding this show, because 2005, my family, we didn't have like digital telly or Sky by that point. We hadn't had it for years, so I actually, you know, followed wrestling and loved wrestling for most of my teenage years without ever watching an episode of Raw or SmackDown or even a pay-per-view. My pay-per-view watching would be whatever DVDs I was able to pick up here and there. But keeping up with the day-to-day would depend whether or not I'd asked Robert about what happened on Raw, which I didn't always do consistently. So I learned that ECW was coming back and that One Night Stand was a thing the morning after it. And I learned it as I was queuing outside HMV in Argyle Street, waiting to meet John Cena, which was the day after One Night Stand. The day after One Night Stand, there was a show in Glasgow, or maybe it was a day or a couple of days after, but there was a SmackDown show in Glasgow. The reason I'm not sure if that timing is correct is because I know there were some SmackDown guys at the show. but not a huge amount to say that they couldn't have ran a show in Glasgow. It was only a select few. But there was a SmackDown show in the days afterwards. Like I'm pretty sure it was the Monday or the Tuesday afterwards. But basically, this was before WWE were regularly doing like November and April in the UK. That would come afterwards, like maybe in the year or two after that. But that they were in Glasgow, and I'll tell the story long form down the line, like the actual meeting John Cena and everything. But I had skipped school to meet John Cena, and I was standing outside in Argyle Street in the wind and the rain, and listening to two people talking in front of me. And they said, "Did you see the ECW show last night or whenever it was?" And I went, "Yeah, that was dead good." And I thought, "What? ECW? What, they're doing the Invasion again?" I'm like, "What?" Like, I knew about ECW, but I'd never really seen it. So not long after that, I got the Rise and Fall of ECW DVD.
My
That
God,
was excellent. And that was the catalyst for this resurgence, for this event, was how well that DVD did. So then a few months later, I'm on a family holiday to the States. It's my second time in California. So this is the second time. This is after meeting Rikishi. This is 2 years after that. And I get pick up on DVD in a shop there. And I bought it because I knew that my DVD player back home could play American region DVDs if you punch the right code into it. And I must have watched that pay-per-view. Oh, God. Easily in the triple figures, like so much. There would be weekends where I would watch it 3 or 4 times. I was so mesmerized about it because it was like nothing I'd ever seen before. And there was familiar faces there, of course. There's also a bunch of ECW guys that I'd heard about, but I'd never really properly seen in action. And that was my real introduction to ECW. And it was only after that I would start to then build up a library and go back and appreciate ECW in its heyday for what it was. And what I love about the One Night Stand DVD is that it comes with an extra audio commentary. Do you know about this?
Yeah, JBL.
Yeah, the JBL one. It's terrible, and actually at points he's actually quite racist at points.
Really
but
racist.
Yeah, about the different ethnic minorities and represented at the show, but it's bonkers. But like the show itself is fantastic, and even just things like the RVD appearance.
That's one of my favorite parts of the whole show.
And then the run-in, Sabu showing up, the Sandman entrance, which you have to watch on YouTube to really appreciate it, because even the DVD copy, they've edited out Enter Sandman, but you want to watch the original with Enter Sandman and hear the audience singing along.
Well, now I say I've got that DVD that I burned that day. Like, it's the original recording, so I've kind of got that on DVD, which is really, really cool. I remember watching that show, and obviously, again, not knowing much about ECW and not knowing a lot of the wrestlers. So I'd never heard of, Masato Tanaka. I'd never heard of Super Crazy and people like that, I remembered Mike Awesome from The Invasion. But anytime someone I knew came out, I was like kind of relieved, like Jericho or Rey Mysterio or whatever. And I remember when in the RVD promo, when the lights go out after Rhino comes in, I thought it was The Undertaker because I didn't know Sabu, I didn't know Sabu. I didn't know the Sandman. I knew Tommy Dreamer, of course, and the Dudley Boys and that sort of thing. But it was just kind of cool. I was kind of getting introduced to these characters through this show, but they were, it was kind of like comebacks for them at this show. But to me, they were new,
Yeah, one match that I loved from that show that I really appreciated. It was one of the first matches in my life that I appreciated on a technical wrestling level, was the opener, Lance Storm versus Chris Jericho. It's excellent. It's short.
I love that match.
But it's such a technically sound, excellent match. And I mean, really, there's so many great things with the show, but what makes the show is the crowd and the Hammerstein Ballroom. Just so passionate. And then you then go a year later and you get the same again. And it's interesting to compare the two shows because I consider them both bona fide ECW shows, but you can tell like the 2006 show is the platform for the TV show.
Yeah.
For that coming along. And you had I still like it. You had more WWE crossover. And here's the thing, like the match doesn't open with Angle and Orton.
No, it's Taz and Lawler.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Taz's last match, if you can call it that. But it was brilliant. The fans loved it. That's all you really expected from the match at that point, was Taz just to choke him out.
Yeah, he came out to his
and
old song. Brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant. And you know what? Fans accepted that because even though Lawler was a WWE guy, he had appeared in ECW in its heyday when they had the WWF crossover, and he was so vocal about being anti-ECW. That is a genuine opinion that Lawler has harbored for many years. He hated it. And so what better guy to put on the that show and have him choke out? And then you've got Angle and Orton. The funny thing is, Angle was drafted to ECW in the storyline, and apart from a brief appearance, which was never broadcasted, Angle was not an ECW guy. But he fit the ECW mold, and so the fans accepted him, and they were quite happy to see him, destroy Randy Orton. And then you get to the tag match with Edge and Foley teaming up against was it Terry Funk and Tommy Dreamer?
Yeah, and Beulah McGillicuddy.
And don't forget Bella Alfonso also involved in that match. Lita's involved, isn't she? Yeah, with Beulah versus this like an intergender match. So there's so much WWE crossover, but it's done well on the whole. And then of course the main event with Cena and RVD, which is what made me a John Cena fan. Even though this was after I met the man, I didn't really accept Cena as a kind of a wrestler in my kind of smarky teenage years until I saw how resilient he was in the face of a hostile crowd. It was really something else. I just love the way he walks to the ring with his belt up in there. He's just like, this is me, accept it or leave it. And but it was also a good match. The result was good. I've always gone back and forth on how I feel about the finish of the match with Edge helping RVD, but I love it. And it's got that iconic sign, if Cena wins, we riot. I realize I've rambled a lot and you brought this show to the table. What do you love about 2006?
That's one of my favourite matches of all time. But what I love about the 2006 one is that it does still feel like an ECW show with WWE involvement, right? So like Orton and Edge, but especially Cena. It's almost as if today, say Roman Reigns makes one appearance in AEW. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it seems different and it's special and it's like, what is happening? Like John Cena and ECW. It was so cool. And I remember loving Cena at the time when he did the entrance with the title, when he's got his hat down and he's just walking through and he's just getting punched by the fans.
It's terrible.
Like it's so. I mean, he's so cool, and the match is great. Cena's a genius in that match, and that to me, that's the only really match on that show that I really love. The other ones I don't really rate, but that's a one match show in terms, and along with like the crowd and the idea of ECW. But I also loved the Big Show's involvement in that. Remember when Big Show came out? And he started like throwing everybody about the ring, and he like destroyed the FBI and people like that. I thought that was a really cool fit, and people were kind of miffy about Big Show being an ECW, but after this sort of interaction, they were all right with it. So, let's move on. Let's try and get a couple more in before we run out of time. You want to bring one to the table, or will I give you a couple more?
Let's see. So the ones that I've got left on my list, all I've really got left that we didn't talk. It's mainly just WrestleManias now. So why don't you bring something to the table and then we can can wrap up.
I'll give you one more normal one, then we'll talk about two WrestleManias in particular, right?
Okay, so, cool.
I also have SummerSlam 2005 on my list, which I used to watch every single holiday I went on. I would take a laptop or like a portable DVD player, and for some reason, even up to 2015, I watched this show every single holiday.
All right.
I don't know why. Orton and Taker and Eddie and Ray and Batista and JBL, and I love the Shawn and Hogan match and the Cena and Jericho match. Just a great show. Also have, of course, No Mercy 07, Royal Rumble 08, but the one I think will be on your list as well, maybe, I think so, Money in the Bank 2011.
It should be on my list. For whatever reason, I've not written it down. I'll tell you why I haven't put it on my list. It's only because I've tried to avoid matches that, for me, are one-match shows. Shows that are one-match shows for me. So that's why I've not put WrestleMania 18 on it, because for me, that's a one-match show.
Well, I think
I like Randy and Christian, but,
Yeah. This Money in the Bank show, there's something about this show that's just infectious, and I've watched this one a lot. because of the buzz in the crowd for the whole show. You know, and both Money in the Bank ladder matches are great, especially the SmackDown one with Daniel Bryan winning. No one expected Daniel Bryan to win that. And seeing that it was a lot of like future stars, you know, like Justin Gabriel and Heath Slater and stuff, people who had a lot of potential and people had a lot of like big plans for, and we all thought they were going to be like big stars and ended up maybe not, you know, fulfilling that. But I love the buzz in this show. Even Big Show and Mark Henry have a really fun match.
I like their matches. I really loved that run. They had great matches, Big Show and Henry.
Yeah, which is random because they're both guys that work the same style and are good to work with people who aren't their style. But the fact they can kind of go together is just is really impressive. And then the Raw title match, the Raw Money in the Bank ladder match with Del Rio winning, another kind of like people were kind of expecting that, but it was kind of okay that they won, you know, because we all had big plans for Del Rio. Orton and Christian, I think, is great. It was one of their amazing matches in that sort of 5-match feud that was ridiculous. And I love the finish. It was like if Orton gets DQ'd, he loses the title, and he just low blows Christian, and the fans know he's won the title, so the fans pop, you know, before the bell even rings. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Kelly and Brie Bella have a really fun match. But then the main event, of course, with Punk and Cena is one of the greatest matches ever. It's one of my top 3 favourite matches of all time. Yep. Not because of the match, but because of the vibe, the buzz, the atmosphere. I wasn't even there, but I was shaking watching this match at home at like 4 a.m. And, you know, Punk was the man at the time. Punk could do no wrong. Cena wrestles a great match here, regardless of what anyone says. It's just a great show, and it's one of I'd put it up there as one of my favourite shows of all time, top 5 anyway.
Absolutely, I love the show, and for me, you know, I know what I said about, you know, 1-match shows and whatnot, but you know, it's really historically it's symbolic of a turning tide in the industry at the time, isn't it?
Yeah.
And like, and I've said many times here that that Summer of Punk, it can really be credited for bringing me back into wrestling at a time where it kind of drifted. Like I would follow like the big shows, or I would follow WrestleMania or whatnot, but I would never sit and watch the shows. It was after this that I started watching pay-per-views every month again, and I started going on WWE.com every Tuesday morning to find out what happened on Raw and to watch the highlights. And I credit that to this angle and to Punk and winning. And I'm trying to remember, because I was 20 years old when this match happened, and I still don't honestly think in my heart of hearts that I expected Punk to win. I just thought that they were taking advantage of the fact that he was leaving to put Cena over. Really, they were going to have a great match, and it was going to come close. Maybe I hadn't registered that it was Punk's hometown, but I didn't. I thought maybe there would be a screwy finish, or maybe Cena would finally do a full-on heel turn or something, but I didn't actually expect the result that we got. And going back and watching, I love the way it plays out. I mean, it does feel really legitimate. Like Laurinaitis comes out, we hadn't seen him before really on screen.
Yeah.
In that role, this was pre kind of people power. This was the catalyst for that. And it's just it's iconic. And even recently when Drake Maverick got his contract back at NXT, even in a losing effort for the Cruiserweight title, I think prior to that on Twitter he'd posted a picture of Punk kissing McMahon away with the title, but he'd superimposed his own head on it to imply that, you know, if I win the Cruiserweight title, which he didn't, I'm out here with it. So but I thought that was really clever, and what that shows is that, you know, 9 years later we're still talking about it, we still remember that so fondly. And Money in the Bank, you know, it's not like a major pay-per-view, but it still stands out.
I can't believe that was 9 years ago. That seems like
9 years.
That's crazy, man. But yeah, that's an amazing show. But yeah, you're right about the 1-match thing. Like, none of these other matches on the card come close to Punk and Cena. But it's the atmosphere and the buzz of the show, you know, that kind of goes through the whole thing that makes it so special to me anyway. I also love the 2013 one, but there's nothing really too special about that other than RVD's return, which I thought was great. And they had the all heels versus all faces Money in the Bank ladder matches, you know, really random, but both amazing ladder matches. The 2013 absolutely. One. But let's finish off and let's talk about 2 really, really special WrestleManias. So lead us out to these 2 last shows.
Well, the ones that I think you're referring to are 19 and 20. Am I right? Yeah,
they are indeed.
So it's interesting that we coupled these together, but you could not get to WrestleManias, even though they're 1 year apart. They feel so different to one another in terms of the atmosphere of each show, and they're both good WrestleManias, don't get me wrong, but they both feel so separate. Like WrestleMania 19 is huge, and I did not appreciate just how stacked this card was at the time. I think when I was 12 years old and WrestleMania 19 happened, I was still thinking of 17 as my reference point, and I didn't accept that this was on par. And I still remember being in my first year computing class at my secondary school and getting in trouble for logging onto WWE.com just to read about what was going to happen at WrestleMania, just to read about the matches. And I thought, oh my God, is Austin going to wrestle The Rock? That's amazing. Again, but this match, it's true. I got into serious trouble about that for that. But this is definitely a contender for greatest Mania of all time. If anything, you could hold it up against, if anything can be held up against 17, and you could put a compelling argument against 17, I think 19 is probably the closest you're going to get.
Agreed.
I mean, I talked about Lance Storm and Chris Jericho in One Night Stand 2005, giving me an appreciation for great technical wrestling, but Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho, it is very much a show stealer. But there's so much to appreciate about this card. The opener is fun with Mysterio and Matt Hardy. Matt Hardy is fully fledged version 1, and Mysterio has, he's not even a year into the company at that point, and he's so on fire at that point.
Yeah,
then,
so popular.
The Taker match is forgettable in terms of how it stands up in terms of the streak, but what makes that is the entrance, isn't it?
That's the entrance, absolutely.
That's why you watch that streak match is the entrance. I also just love the aesthetic. I love the slightly angled ramp that they go down.
First time they've ever done that. Yeah, and it's also now it's kind of funny when they go back to that in the baseball stadiums for the Royal Rumbles the past couple of years. It reminds me of WrestleMania 19.
Absolutely, and I love the set. I still think my favorite match from WrestleMania 19 is Vince and Hogan for the story and for the storytelling and the atmosphere.
I totally get that, but I tell you something. Every year when I go back and watch WrestleMania 19 before the upcoming WrestleMania or whatever, I never watch it. I don't know why. I never watch it. I never have that urge to watch it. I love Rock and Austin from this show. I think that's the match of the night, and I think it actually tops Michaels and Jericho.
Do you know what? I'm with you there because it's a beautiful match. It's underrated in their series, I think.
Yep, and it's so important. It's Austin's last match.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But sorry, you were saying about Vince and Hogan.
I think for me, the best single image that represents that match is Vince peering up from the apron with blood all over his face and a metal pipe, like Freddy Krueger or him out The Shining, the Here's Johnny moment. It's like that. And everything about it, I love the reaction to Piper's running.
I never understood that. See, in 2003 when I watched this, I didn't get it. I didn't get why Piper got involved. But obviously now, historical context is a thing. But when I was younger, I didn't get it. I was like, why? What's Hogan done to Piper?
That's funny. But yeah, it's Austin Rock is great. I think Triple H and Booker T is a bit of a shame, really, the way it went down.
I like it.
I think it's a bit sluggish. I'm not even complaining about the result or the length of time it took him to pin, the thing that people point to. I just think the match itself was a disappointment, regardless of the result.
I love JR and King on commentary in that match, though. King
they bicker so much that night.
Fighting, and Flair keeps getting involved, and JR is just screaming to the ref, "Get Flair out here!" And King's like, "Come on, JR, it's WrestleMania, leave him alone."
And you've told me 10 times tonight that it's WrestleMania.
It's WrestleMania, and it just goes 19. Flair has no business up there, damn it! Greatest commentary team of all time, bar none. But some of these matches that they do really show their chemistry, and I think this is one of them. That's why I like that match a lot. But I can get why people are frustrated by it.
Absolutely. But yeah, I think, Jericho Michaels, Austin Rock, then the main event, Angle Lesnar.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think kind of Angle Lesnar is kind of defined by the shooting star press now, which is a shame because, but it's also true that those guys went on to have much better matches than that one. Because that one really was derailed by the fact that both men were in really bad nick at that point. Lesnar from the shooting star press, obviously, and then Angle's neck at the time was just you watch that Mania of WrestleMania documentary and you realise just how risky that was. That they would never let him wrestle now under those circumstances.
Oh God, I know. It's almost like the whole Daniel Bryan thing, Like, would they let Daniel Bryan wrestle? Carry on wrestling when he was in such bad nick? Pretty much the same thing. Just by you mentioning that Mania of WrestleMania documentary and just thinking about it gives me butterflies. That is such a special documentary because
And
it
it's
is
not
the
on the network.
catalyst. I don't know why it's not on the network, but it's the catalyst to what we know now. With the Last Ride and 24 and 365 and that sort of thing, and Chronicle or whatever. Nothing was you'd seen Beyond the Mat before, but nothing has pulled the curtain back as much as this documentary. But not so much about all the inner workings of the business, more about what the business means to people. And really, when you think about it, how dangerous the show was in terms of Austin being in bad nick, Hogan being in bad nick, Angle being in bad nick, then Lesnar nearly killing himself. It's just a surreal WrestleMania. Vince McMahon does a leg drop off a ladder. What? It's just a surreal WrestleMania.
It's crazy. And, I think it's funny that to this day, if you play a WWE video game, that the shooting star press is still one of Lesnar's signature moves. But he hasn't tried to hit one since, and rightfully so. But he used to do it all the time in OVW.
He should just do it one match and just blow everybody's socks off.
I'd love him to just hit it on Angle one time just to get it right.
Yeah, he's like, see, got it. But I mean, it's a good wrestling match. But I think the SummerSlam match at SummerSlam 03, I think that's better. And they have obviously their Iron Man match, which is, ridiculous. But like, this isn't their best match, but it is defined by that. But when I watch that match now, I find matches fascinating. A bit like what I talked about with Sami Zayn and John Cena. When you're watching a match and you see how they work around something, working around the Angle injury, and you know how bad Angle's neck is, but he's still getting belly to bellied, and he's still getting whipped into the turnbuckle, and it's like, oh my God, you watch it and you're like, how is this happening? Yeah. It's a great WrestleMania, but it's one of those more surreal and special WrestleManias that you can't argue that it's one of the greatest ever, and it has to be in the conversation for greatest ever up there with for me, 17, 19, and 20 are the three best WrestleManias of all time.
Yeah, and you mentioned 20. It feels like such a, not in terms of quality, but in terms of presentation, it feels like such a contrast. You go from this massive baseball stadium at Safeco Field in Seattle, Washington, and then you go to Madison Square Garden, which is a big venue, but it's not a stadium, it's an arena. And it feels so much more contained, and I think something about that presentation feels special. And again, for me, like, in terms of actual in-ring quality, like, there's a couple of matches that are good, and I think a lot of the matches are kind of rushed to get lots of guys on the card. There's so much fat you could trim out of this WrestleMania, but it's the aesthetic and the crowd that I keep coming back to. Like, everybody, I think, rightfully condemns Goldberg and Lesnar, but I love watching it for the crowd. That's why I like watching that match, and I refuse to accept that as unwatchable, because that's not the case.
Did you watch the Broken Skull sessions with Goldberg earlier in the year?
No, I think I missed the Goldberg one.
Basically, they talk about this match, and Austin's the special guest ref, and so the crowd are just immediately turned on the match, and they're singing "na na na na, hey hey hey, goodbye" and stuff.
Yep.
But then they start chanting Austin, and both Goldberg and Lesnar look at Austin, and like Austin does this wee sort of smile or whatever, and like that kind of silences the crowd. But Austin says he's thinking in his head at that time he was about to start running the ropes. But he thought he better not take away from the match. But I just imagine that happened. The place where they went mental if he just started doing that. But I know what you mean when you watch that match now. It's like, it's not that great of a match, but it's not that bad. It's not the worst match ever.
No, absolutely not. I love. Well, obviously the main event is excellent. That's probably the best match of the night. But I love the opener. I've got so much time for the opener. Seen on Big Show. It does everything a good match opener is supposed to do in terms of getting the crowd on and getting them switched on for a great fun night.
A perfect opener, and I think an underrated match, and it's not underrated the fact where people don't talk about it. They talk about it all the time, but they always say it's a letdown, and that's Evolution versus the Rock and Sock Connection. I love this match.
I do as well, for the same reasons. It's the atmosphere of it. I think the people who say it was a letdown, I think that came from Mick Foley being disappointed in the match.
Yeah.
And, I don't think he has anything to be embarrassed about, because even though it was the big draw here was not really The Rock's return. It was the fact that Mick Foley was coming back to wrestle after 4 years. Right. But with so many people in the ring, like, I wasn't expecting what we would eventually get with Cactus Jack and Randy Orton at Backlash. Mick was in great shape for this match. His one of his children had just been born again, was just born at that point. He'd found Jesus.
One of his found God. I was just about to say that. I'm born again fully.
But it's fun. It's fast paced, and it's fun. There's a moment in that match where The Rock does the Ric Flair strut, and brilliant. He gets booed. The fans respect Flair too much to accept The Rock making fun of him. But yeah, it's and that was The Rock's last appearance. Well, not his last appearance, but it was the last match for over a decade.
7 years?
For 7 or 8 years. Yeah, until Survivor Series 11. But yeah, it's just I love that match, and it's so important because the only time The Rock and Randy Orton have ever wrestled as well.
Yeah,
that's mental for me.
I love the fact that Orton gets the win because he's the guy we're going with, and obviously it plants the seeds. And the Royal Rumble stuff from back in January with people saying that Mick's a coward and he ends up being in the Rumble and he attacks Orton and that sort of thing, leading to that Backlash match, which is just incredible. One of the better street fights in WWE history. But then you've got Christian and Chris Jericho having a screamer.
That is a screamer.
Under the radar screamer.
Thank you for reminding me of that match. I'd forgotten about it. I love it, and I love that was refreshing as well because we hadn't seen Jericho as a babyface for years at this point.
Yeah.
So it was nice to have Y2J back, and I love that. We've seen a lot of slaps in the history of wrestling, but that slap that Trish gives Jericho, or is it? Did she kick him? And where the sun?
No, she slaps him. She slaps him twice, and then
it's
Christian
so
finishes it.
Vicious. Doesn't it look so painful the way Trish slaps him? I remember that. I love that match.
Eddie and Angle, which I know you don't like, you don't like it, but you were disappointed in it because you were wanting it to be a more brutal match,
Yeah, I like it objectively. If I cut it away from the build up, and it's just Kurt Angle and Eddie Guerrero having a match, I think it's brilliant. And I love the finish. I will always love that finish. But I just felt the presentation within the context of the storyline didn't make sense. And so that disappointed me.
With Taker and Kane, Taker's return to the Deadman gimmick.
Highlight of the night.
I think it's amazing. Obviously, I've said this before, that American Badass Taker is my favourite Taker. So when I got into wrestling in 2001, I only really knew Biker Taker. And I'd seen, obviously, clips and stuff of Deadman Taker, but never really to the extent of what I would go on to. So when this was happening, I remember the storyline so vividly, like the ring shaking and all the promos and Kane being in the ring and screaming, "I buried you alive" and all that stuff. Yeah. And I remember, right, I've talked about this before, I think, but I remember the day after WrestleMania 20, I had to go to school, of course, but my dad had recorded WrestleMania 20 for me, and he had fast-forwarded all the way through it to the Taker match, so I could watch the Taker match before I went to school. So I came downstairs and had my breakfast and stuff, and we go to watch the Taker match. And I'm sitting on the floor right in front of the TV, and Kane comes out and stuff, and then the lights go off, and the Druids come out. And I remember moving further and further away from the TV because I was scared. And I'd never experienced it before. Like, I'd never seen Deadman Taker in my sort of lifetime. And I got further in front of my dad's, like, saying to me, "Wait, don't worry. It's fine. It's just the Undertaker." And I love this match because of that. There's nothing that really happens in the match, but the return is so epic. And
that's it.
It's such a prominent moment in my childhood, in my fandom for the Undertaker.
That's a match where it's not actually a great match, but nobody was really looking forward to the match. People were looking forward to the entrance, really, I think. The presentation of it, then the return. The match itself is quick, it's to the point, and it just is really a reintroduction of this version of Deadman Taker. But the whole, everything from like the Druids that you talk about, the Paul Bearer return, which nobody saw coming, or maybe they speculated, but it was a surprise and the fans really popped for it. To seeing Taker again as the Deadman, it was so special, and it's a real spine-tingling moment. It's a great WrestleMania, and I love it. You might sense from my tone, though, Chris, that I'm speaking in the way as if we're wrapping up quickly, and I'll tell you for why. I have drank so many fluids during this podcast that I don't want to call another toilet break because we're just about done. So I wondered if we could just quickly wrap this up, unless there's anything else any other points you'd like to make about WrestleMania 20.
We'll wrap up, but we didn't mention the main event, the Benoit, Triple H and Michaels.
Great match, goes for 20 minutes, Benoit wins.
I know you'll disagree, but I think this is the best triple threat match in WWE history. And I know that you think that probably Vengeance 02 is probably your favourite one. But
Yeah,
I
I
think
guess so. I think I'm with you. If I look at it objectively, I think that Vengeance 02 is more of a sentimental favourite for me. But I think objectively that's an excellent match. Although I do also love John Cena versus HBK versus Triple H.
yeah, that's a good one. And I love obviously the ending with Benoit and Guerrero was so special and stuff like that, and it still makes me cry to this day. But I will let you go and pee, my friend. If you want to go pee, that's fine. I can wrap up here.
Yeah, let's just do that, because otherwise we'll be coming back just to talk for a couple of minutes. But I want to say a big thank you to anyone who is listening to this, especially if you're not an immediate friend or family member. Though those other people, please still listen. We need you. And a big thanks to you, Chris, for your continued brilliance with this podcast. And everyone stay safe.
Yeah, thank you for being able to hold in the pee for so long. And yes, we're getting dangerously close. Social media, remember, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can get us on there. The Wrestling Connection as well on YouTube. Please support and subscribe and follow wherever you can. And please tell some friends about the Wrestling Connection. So thank you very much for listening to another epic episode. We'll be back next week for episode number 10. Can you believe it? And until then, thanks very much for listening, everybody. Take care of yourselves and each other. And remember, this is the Wrestling Connection podcast. Enjoy yourself.